Hello and welcome to the I-Kuan podcast. This is Isaac. This is episode 18. In this one, we continue discussing the I-Kuan Tao and its connection with Wang Shu Jin and his school in Taiwan. And then we also talk about the meditation in Bruce's system and how that is connected to the dissolving process in energy gates. All right. Hope you enjoy the episode and take care.
Welcome back to the I-Kuan podcast. We've been talking about opening the energy gates of your body. And now we're at the part where it's talking about Taoist practices in Taiwan and Hong Kong in the 1970s. And so we've been digging into the life of the martial arts teacher Wang Shu Jin, who was a prominent martial arts teacher in Taiwan, who was also involved with Taoism. And what we know about his experience may be typical of the kind of things that are going on with Taoist schools at that time. But it gives us a sense of what people were up to. Originally, he was from mainland China. In Tianjin, Wang Shu Jin was a leader in a religious sect known as I-Kuan Tao. I-Kuan means consistent or unwavering. Tao means way. So Wang Shu Jin, he was a prominent teacher in this sect in Taiwan. In his book, Bagua Lianhuanzhang, Wang Shu Jin states that after having spent a short time studying with his teacher, Zhang Zhaodong, he became interested in meditating, Buddhism, and becoming a vegetarian. So in his early 20s, Wang Shu Jin decided to join the I-Kuan Tao. And it says here, it is not known if Zhang Zhaodong was an I-Kuan Taoist, but that many people in Tianjin were part of the movement. It says here that they came under increasing sort of persecution in the 1920s, and then were somewhat underground after that. So this is all taken from Bagua Journal, October 1995. And so this digs a little bit deeper into the school. One of the articles here is from Kent Howard, who learned from the lineage of Wang Shu Jin, and he also became a member of he's an American, Kent Howard, and he joined the I-Kuan Tao as part of his training in martial arts. And he speaks a little bit about what they would do during their training. He says here, I-Kuan Tao is really pantheism. It is mainly a Buddhist and Taoist faith. It also embraces the general principles of Confucianism, like being upright, loyal, and honest, being a good person, and so on. But mostly, it is of Buddhist and Taoist origin, relying heavily on Taoist cosmology and Taoist philosophy, especially coming out of the Tao Te Ching. But they do not embrace only these philosophies. They also quote, for example, from Jesus. They revere what they call the five religions: Taoist, Buddhist, Confucian, Muslim, and Judaism/Christianity. They consider these five facets of the same jewel. They promote world peace in their belief that the jewel has facets that each shine brightly in different reflections of the light. Unfortunately, because they embrace all religions, they are enormously unpopular with everyone. So that's some of the things that go into this Taoist school that was going on in Taiwan and Hong Kong at that time. He goes on to talk a little bit more about how the religion was outlawed in Taiwan for some time. It wasn't actively persecuted, but they were under surveillance a lot. The reason being that you had a lot of very powerful people belonging to what was almost like a secret society, and it was scary to outsiders. Powerful politicians and military leaders were also involved in I-Kuan Tao, and the others were wondering what they were up to. There were also a lot of martial artists who were I-Kuan Taoists, and throughout history in China, martial artists have been known as troublemakers. So it sounds like there was a connection between, high-level officials, the martial arts world, sort of a lot of political stuff going on behind the scene, as well as sort of this whole religious thing going on. I get the impression this is different from like going to church here in America. This is there's layers to what goes on in the training of, Taoist religion.
Yeah, I think it's all kind of mixed up. There's a martial tradition sort of within a religion, within a larger spiritual culture, right? So like,
And political and economic and
political, yeah, and so everybody, not everybody, but I think there are many layers to that sort of type of society, right? They have a public face, they have a private face, they have a political face. I think it would be more, um, you know, they are like the Catholic Church in a sense, but it's more, I don't know, like an egalitarian or some sort of hippie church that like will take something from everyone and like be like, yeah, man, it's all everything is good and
Right.
uh,
Yeah, yeah. Like
you know
philosophically
so
speaking, they're drawing from a bunch of different sources, unlike a Catholic Church. But yet
right,
it's
right,
not a big organization. There's a lot of official people involved. There's a lot of church time and
yeah, yeah. So
culture. Families are meeting there. It's a big part of your life, I expect.
and any religion in China in the last 60 years, 70 years or so has that it's always tough situation over there apparently, because I mean same thing with like Falun Gong and things like that. They um sure there's some good elements to it, people, community, things like that. There's uh, Qigong is part of it. I don't know, to me it's a lot like more like you know political culture here where you have different facets and you know they're all Christians, but like that doesn't necessarily mean they believe the same political stuff, and so and then throw in martial arts, and I mean it's got a lot of different things going on there.
Yeah,
So I
there's a lot of
think
different threads in that, tapestry.
so. I had a professor at SF State, and she went to China in I think 74, and she talked about how, there was a very little outward expression of anything, really cultural because it was still, that thing of, if you stick your head up too high, get your neck cut off. And I think the I-Kuan Tao had, had learned that lesson a long time, and had sort of learned to go underground with certain things. And I don't know if it was, Bruce's Taoist priest training. I'm assuming was with the I-Kuan Tao because he was introduced by Wang Shu Jin. So, that just makes sense. So the kind of stuff he did, where you're doing exorcisms and you're doing all this other stuff. It's like to me that's religious practices. That has nothing to do with martial arts or um, it has to do with sort of a folk religion, right? So
Yeah,
they're
it's being
one
a priest,
right. So on the one hand, there's this folk religion that's like basically ancestor worship and this sort of thing, and then there's this other part of it, which is this like you know sort of martial arts secret society thing going on. So I don't think we really have a parallel in the West.
No, and we don't know much about it. We were just scamming from some articles here. So moving on to another topic in Taoist meditation, looking at Bruce Francis's latest meditation book, he talks about three different levels of Taoist meditation. So, it's not all the same thing. And I think, looking at I-Kuan Tao, there's different layers that people practice depending on what they do in life and how much commitment they have. And that's probably true for all spiritual organizations. So he says the first level is for stress relief, where that's most of the majority of meditation that's taught in the West and why most people do it. And you can do it for short stretches at a time. He says the second level is the purpose of achieving inner peace, which requires, an hour plus per day, working with the teacher, authentic lineage. So that's a pretty big commitment. And then there's this third level for the purpose of enlightenment, a multi-lifetime journey that becomes the primary aim. So this is your life's direction, and now most of your day is now dedicated to doing meditation in all its forms. So that's pretty much a full-time job at that point. And that's, I think, what he's talking about when he says he underwent this priesthood training.
Yeah, the last one. I mean, I think that the weekend warrior kind of I'm gonna meditate like once a week or something like that. That's one, or just when you're stressed out or whatever. That's one element of it. And then he said, like he says, then there's you actually have a goal of wanting to achieve a certain level of it, right? So it's like you want to go beyond just being relaxed and go to being, what we would call spiritual, or that there's a certain depth to it, right? That you want to clear out the ghosts is the term that he used to use. That the first level, the example in the book that he gives, Leo's thing about the red dust, that the first layer is just the shit that life throws at you on a daily basis, right? Do you want to deal with the stress of the fact that the world is falling apart? The second layer is, do you want to deal with your, if you will, your demons, the things that may have come from something in your life. They maybe have been pre-existing conditions from a previous life, but they are there and they fuck up your life, or at least complicate it, right? So you want to address those things. And then the third level is you want to become some kind of, benevolent spiritual being that does good in the world through their spiritual actions. That you want to take it beyond you and take it to a much larger, sense of what it means to, open yourself up to that sort of stuff. So it's like, do you want to be a guy who goes to church once a week, guy who prays every 4 or 5 times a week and goes to church once a week, or do you want to be the preacher? And it's kind of like those are those are sort of your levels. And I think it just, how much time you put into it, will determine sort of what you get from it. So if you're willing to develop 10 years of your life to becoming, to meditating and becoming a, Tao Shi or whatever it's called, then sure, you can go that way. But if you want to have a family and do normal shit and like have a job, and an hour a day is probably a pretty good investment. If you're doing an hour meditation.
What were you saying about ghosts and demons?
Oh, that's I think it's a Buddhist phrase about, your ghosts, or your patterns inside of you that disrupt your flow, right? So these things that repeat in your life over and over and over because of something inside of you, right? One of the major practices in Taoist meditation is to dissolve those ghosts. And like when I did the early years of retreats at Anvil Ranch, we'd always start with a morning not always, but I think every other day we'd start with a morning meditation for 2 hours, and a lot of that was much more like this kind of stuff. It wasn't the ice to water, water to space, and going through individual points. We did some of that, but it was much more going and dissolving, the things that came up inside of you, that as you sat there and did your breathing and did your dissolving, things would come up, and then you would dissolve those things. And you could do it with an agenda. You can do it with, like, I want to address this something here, this thing I know about. You can do it sort of spontaneously, just whatever comes up, and you dissolve that. Or you can use some sort of event, either traumatic or very exhilarating, to kind of juice it up, right? So the classic one is, say you're in a car accident or something, some kind of traumatic event. That's the time to meditate, because that's when you're the most, things are open, and it's just like, okay, if you can do it now, it's going to mitigate the amount that trauma, sticks.
That's when one of those ghosts is forming or whatever. That's one of those blockages is forming. So now's the time to address it as it's being formed in the moment.
Or or it's when some ghost that's floating around in space that's looking for what Bruce was talking about, they're hungry ghosts, right? They're ghosts that are looking for a body. And those moments where you're open like that, if this is where the gaps comes in, right? If you have weaknesses in your structure, that's where those ghosts will attach, right? So you can attract new ghosts through that, or you can, like you say, you can also have the ones that are in you, maybe that you've suppressed, right? Then kind of, that's why people frequently, after a traumatic event will uncover some other trauma that they had, previously kind of suppressed, because it re-triggers the same stuff. So the thing in meditation is, okay, you want to at least, I don't know if you can break the pattern, but you can at least recognize it and maybe soften the blow, so that it doesn't, hit you so hard when it comes up. Yeah, so that was a big part of it. I mean, to me, that's what meditation is doing that stuff. And the rest of it is the sort of training wheels to get you to the point of, being able to handle that, so like things like breathing, dissolving your whole body. Those are, yeah, well, those are the training wheels for, and even doing inner dissolving, where you're like, the stuff that's in the relaxing into your being and that stuff, where you're working on, dissolving not the physical stuff anymore, but the stuff in the, other, the bodies 3 through 8, right? So it the journey of meditation, in a sense, right, leads to that place of being able to say, okay, I can look at the things inside of myself and, acknowledge them for what they are, I think, is the simplest way to put it. It's like you stop trying to rationalize or pity yourself. I mean, the one that always stuck with me is, you aren't special. So bad shit's going to happen to you just like everyone else. And, the sun's going to shine on you just like everyone else. And, crying over the bad shit that happened to you because you aren't, because you thought you were special, is just like, waste of time. And then, to me, that was like, oof, like, okay. So, trying to dissolve the sense that you feel special, dissolving the sense that you feel special is an interesting, or, dissolving, anger at the world, not any one specific thing, but at the universe for being so fucked up. You dissolve that sense of, anger on a big level, and things like that. So when you start going on to those dimensions, in a sense, I mean, that in one sense you go further out, right? First you deal with the stuff that's inside of you, then you deal with the stuff that's between you and things that are close to you, then you deal with stuff that's you and sort of nature, and then you deal with stuff that's you and the cosmos. And it just, like, how much time do you have to devote to that? Like, it's a hell of a journey if you choose to embark on it. But I think it is like a life's work. I mean, it's like deciding you want to become a
fighter pilot.
Yeah, or like I was thinking, like a deep sea explorer, right? Like you want to learn all the skills, because if you're a deep sea explorer, right, you got to learn all the stuff about how to be on a boat and do all of that shit, and how to scuba dive and do all that shit, and you got to learn, what are the things about, I don't know what a deep sea diver does, but the things that, what are the things you're looking at, right? And so it's like, that's going to take you a while, right? And it's the same sort of thing with your internal world. It's like, you can go for a long time. I mean, the idea that there's as much inside of you as there is in the entire universe, right? So there's as much space that you can go into inside of you as there is in the entire outer world, right? So it's and you can go in either direction, you'll kind of end up in the same place. But that's if you so choose to to take that journey.
And you don't have, and I think what's really cool is
Personally,
about his 3 levels is like you can dip your toe in the water, you can go swimming, or you can go deep sea diving down to the bottom, but you can participate at whatever level you choose, whatever level you're comfortable with, and whatever level you enjoy.
right. I mean, and I think that's, I mean, the same goes for doing Qigong, right? You can do it once a week so that, you have a general sense of health. You can do it every day for an hour so that you really start to understand what's happening inside of your body, or you can be a nut like us and, spend your whole life doing it and, be able to go places inside your body that most people can't go. But, there's not real any, in the modern world, there's not a whole lot of benefit, outward benefit to being able to open and close your joints, right? No one's going to be impressed by it, or to dissolve, right? Like no one's going to be impressed by the fact that you can sit there and dissolve your shoulders. I mean, some people might, but they're just as weird as you are. But the idea is that, okay, it's not going to make you rich. It's not going to attract attention. It's not going to make you famous. It's not even going to look good to your neighbors. Right. But it is going to give you this awareness of your internal world. And it's like, if that's a choice that you make, I mean, I remember, when Bruce was on the Donahue show, right? There was this old lady and, I forget who asked the question, but, Bruce's answer was essentially, you can worry about what the container looks like, the shell, or you can worry about how you feel inside of it. And, that's kind of the thing is it's like meditation is just to me, a continuation of that sense of, okay, I've got my body together. I feel good inside my body. Let's go and let's see what the mind is doing, and I think that's where, Qigong in a sense ends with that, that crossroads, right? You can either go into the meditation, realm from there, or you can say, okay, now I'm cool here. I'm just going to loop back to the beginning and, keep going around the track. And because I like, it's like doing a loop on a trail, you can either just loop the trail over and over, or you can, and each time you loop it, you'll find a whole bunch of new things. It's not, it's always going to be different. Or you can say, okay, now I have the groundwork for climbing to the peak, or that sort of thing.
Good stuff, brother.
So, I mean, I think most of it's like, it's about your personal choice.
No doubt, bro. So now on deeper into the book. We're talking about opening the energy gates gate by gate. And here we come to the end of the chapter, guidelines for the practice of standing Qigong. So the first thing we've talked about a lot, don't overstrain your energy system. So, this is something we've talked, ad nauseum about. You don't want to burn yourself out. You work slowly, release the energy as you go. And if you go too fast, it creates strain. So you want to avoid that. And secondly, it says dissolve from the skin inward. So, you should go no more than 1/2 an inch to start with. And then as you, especially like in your brain and stuff, and then you want to dissolve, just, work your way inward from the outside. So if you're just dissolving at that skin level, that's just fine. You don't have to be going way deep right off the bat.
That's like the onion, right? That you want to go through each layer of the onion before you peel out, before you go to the next one. So
Totally. And, I think we've covered that pretty well here. The next thing he says is interesting. Allow 6 months to stabilize the Dantian and Mingmen. The Dantian in the front of the body, Mingmen in the back there by the spine. That's interesting. If you give it some work, you should be able to extend your mind from the Dantian to the Mingmen in a 3 to 6 month process. I hadn't heard that before.
Well, I also think he's just talking about the sense of being stable in your lower torso, right? That when you first start to stand, the hardest part, it's like getting your sea legs, right? That just getting that comfort in your stance. And a lot of that is sort of quote unquote, dropping into your belly, right? And so that's what I think what he's referring to, as well as the physical part. But
Mm-hmm. So you get a little sense of that heaviness, that connectedness through your legs that's sort of rooted in your lower belly.
yeah, I mean, that's that's what some schools, that's all you do. You just sit there or stand there until that thing stabilizes, and you don't need to go much beyond that. But
So he talks next that the legs are more difficult than the arms, and that's something that comes up in class quite a bit. Your arms are so aware, and your fingers especially so awake, and the nerves are very alive. Whereas our legs, we don't sit much, we don't squat much on the floor, so we become insensitive to energy in our legs. And I've had the same experience. Dissolving or feeling in the legs is definitely harder.
oh yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest benefits of doing this stuff since I was 17, and I'm 46 now, is that I think my legs have a certain stability to them, so I don't worry about my legs being underneath me when I do stuff. Just kind of get this like, it's so the thing that always stuck with me was your phrase about it was a puffy marshmallow or something, that like you just have this gushiness in your legs from doing this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Try to keep that suppleness as much as you can, and springiness at the same time with stability. That's
Yeah,
what
and
standing's all about.
and that awareness of just when you put your foot down, where it's going to land, and then when it lands, there'll be something there.
Your substance there. So the next thing is to stand a minimum of 5 minutes to get benefits. That's that. I like how he sets the bar kind of low there, because people get stressed out and they're like, I don't have half an hour a day, I can't do this. Or like, oh my God, I'm doing hours per day. You don't necessarily have to go that far, although it's good at sometimes to train hard. But 5 minutes a day consistently will start to help your legs sort of get under you.
Right. I mean, I think that's one of the sort of paradigm shifts that has to happen a little bit from, if you've trained sports or done music or something like that. In most activities, you have, if you want to be really good at it, you have to devote your life to it. Right. And that, if you just played basketball a couple, minutes a day, you're not going to be that good at it. And this stuff has a certain thing where even if you do it, 5-10 minutes a day, you won't be great at it, but you'll get a benefit from doing it so even if you do it poorly, you'll still get a benefit from doing it. Right. And I mean, I've met people that, been doing this stuff for, longer than I've been alive. And, they were terrible at it. And it's like, but obviously they're getting something from it because it's helping them and, in their lives, and they're still doing it after that many years. So, but when, objectively, if you look at their form or test them a little bit, they're they aren't that good, and so it's like I don't know. I think I'm a shitty bass player, but I still fool around on it because it's fun. It's like I think it's like you can choose to do something and still get a benefit from it, and if you essentially lower the expectation that you have to, if you're not, Bruce would always say, if you're not Michael Jordan, you can still enjoy playing basketball, and I think that sort of fits.
So the next thing he says, standing for people involved in movement arts. So he's recommending if you're young, you could do a bunch of standing to help your athletic performance. Those over 50 start with a little bit less per day. But hey, I don't know. I agree. You don't have to take it as your main course of study, but a little standing on the side could probably benefit your calmness, your awareness, your body connection when you're performing your other activities.
I think everyone that does this stuff notices how it benefits other activities. I mean, that's part of its, real genius or whatever.
Definitely. So just checking through here, he talks about standing for martial artists. Um, he said, when I was younger, I was actively involved in fighting competitions where it was easy to get severely hurt. And this significantly increased my motivation to learn. So he was spending up to 6 hours a day standing in order to give himself the edge when it came to competitive fighting. He said, if I did not practice hard enough, I was realistically looking at an opponent putting me in the hospital. So he had this really strong motivation to get his awareness, his edge, his ability at the absolute peak. But he said most people don't need to deal with that, and the majority of people practicing internal martial arts are not in their late teens and early 20s. So he says, just take that as it will.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say about that is when you're younger, um, you can practice a little bit, I guess, more aggressively or whatever, longer periods of time, lower stances, more extended postures, things like that. But at a certain point, as you get older, it sort of shifts from, okay, you're not developing power anymore. You want to keep it. And so, in your teens and 20s, it's about getting the power. In your 30s and 40s, it's about keeping, staying strong. In your 50s and 60s, it's about, staying healthy. And, when you're beyond that, I think it's just about maintaining a quality of life, right? So, your priorities change as you get older. I mean, who knows, from what I've seen, the people that practice this stuff into their 60s and 70s, just the balance stuff alone, just the like I was saying earlier, the sort of the confidence in that, when you walk, that when you put your foot down, it's gonna, be stable, I think is a real big one as you get older.
Absolutely. So just wrapping up this section of the chapter, do not stand too long. That's a good one to keep in mind. And then the final one is dissolve your energy blocks at progressively deeper levels. So he talks about like each time you unknot something, you feel a sense of liberated energy is felt moving within. So he's talking about like an actual felt sense of this bound up part of you letting go. Um, and that each time you do that, you get sort of this rush of energy. And then once that becomes less of a rush, then then you're done for the day. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. That sounds pretty dramatic. I think in my practice, I don't know if I'm experiencing a lot of big rushes. But definitely when you feel something let go, it feels good.
Well, I think it's a princess and the pea thing, right? When you first start out, even the smallest release will feel like a large one. And so it can be very intense to just release the slightest thing if you're new to it. After you've been doing it for a while, that same amount of release will feel like almost nothing. It just feels like normal. And that the big ones, it's kind of like a surfer. You can ride them out a little bit better than a novice would. So you're able to like flow with what's happening.
Right. Well, it's been good talking to you. Thanks for making the time.
Yeah, you too. Take care. Hey, folks. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Just a quick reminder to like and subscribe and check out our Patreon for exclusive content. All right. Take care.